When we try to rank sin, what do we say about ranking sin? What do we say about ranking sin, picking one sin above another? What would we say about that, biblically speaking? That it's all the same. It's all the transgression of the commandments of God. When you think about doing the commandments of God, you get a little more help. If you had to pick the greatest commandment of them all, what would it be? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And then this is where Grayson kind of would kick in. He would say, okay, Dad, so what's the second greatest commandment of all? Love your neighbor as yourself. And then you can guess what a child would ask. Well, okay, Dad, what's the third greatest commandment of all? And that's where it starts to get really interesting. Because if we love God, what will we do? Keep His commandments. And making disciples is one of those commandments. So how high in the hierarchy do you rank it? That's kind of hard to say with an actual biblical answer to it. I know practically how important it is because, every congregation in every location can't go on unless they what? Unless they grow. Unless they're able to actively convert people. And this is the method and the way that God chose it. When you think about what all God could have done, the possibilities are endless. But how did He pick for His kingdom to be advanced? He picked the method of, communication, of us going and teaching. I ask you to turn to Luke chapter 5 because other gospel accounts have this account, but Luke's is a little more complete. Luke chapter 5, you've got the multitude wanting to hear the word of God. He goes on to the lake of Gennesaret. He saw two boats that were standing by the lake. Fishermen had gone from them. They were washing their nets. He gets into one of the boats, which was Simon's. He asked him to put him out a little bit from the land, and he went down and he taught the multitudes from the boat. He stopped speaking and he said to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." But what did Simon say to him? Right, we've worked all night and we've caught nothing. And he is a what? He was I'm assuming, a professional fisherman, so he ought to know. But he does add that if you say so, then we'll give it a shot. He had done this. They caught a great number of fish, and the net was breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and they filled both boats so that they began to sink. Simon sees it, and what does he say? "Depart from me, I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken. And so also were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you'll what? You'll catch men." So when they had brought their boats to the land, they forsook all and they followed him. Now this was just 4 men, but the rest of the choosing of the 12 worked similarly as the gospel accounts revealed them to us. They were going to catch men. And you can see here that these were not just people who blindly followed Jesus. I mean, Jesus had to do what with these men? He had to show them. He had to convince them that what? That He was the Son of God. But when they believed it, they were willing to go. Now, we've all become disciples of Christ, and the last lesson that we're going to address is actually trying to go out and teach other people. And the analogy of being fishers of men is really a good one, because when you're an actual fisherman, what are you doing, of course? You're catching fish out of the water. When you're a fisher of men, you're trying to what? Catch people out of the world, out of sin, out of being lost. Of course, how do we do this? We do it with the Word. And maybe more importantly, in our day and time, what do we not do it with? We don't do it with entertainment. Boy, this is coming up. What is next Sunday going to be? Super Bowl. So what will some churches do? They'll probably have big televisions or some way to project it. They'll use that form of entertainment to try to draw people in. So we don't do it with entertainment. What else do we not do it with? Food. What else? Recreation. You could say some other things that we don't do it with. What else? We don't do it by lightening the message. Okay, so how might we lighten the message, for example? You can lighten the message in a couple of ways. You can replace the message of sin and salvation with the message of kind of pop psychology, because that, again, there is a certain segment of people, and a relatively large segment of people, that's very, very appealing to. What else can you do? If you think along those lines, what else can you do to kind of lighten the message? Okay, you can change the message. You can make the barrier of entry. Most people don't start their own business for what reason? They can't what? They can't afford. The barrier to entry is very what? Very high. Easy to get a job with someone. I say that relatively speaking. Relatively easy to get a job with someone else. Very high barrier of entry to just start your own business from scratch. So you lower that barrier of entry by doing things like having a message of pop psychology, or lots of humor in the lessons, or something like that. Something that in the end kind of entertains you more than what? More than converts you. And sometimes that conversion happens by looking at lessons that maybe some people might be more attuned to, the things that touch you emotionally. And there's actually nothing wrong with that. But we make sure that what we're converted to is what the gospel is actually teaching. So this is how we're going out, and we're trying to catch people. And what this lesson is going to do now is to just tell us and show us why this is something that's good to do. Let's look in Acts chapter 14, verse 21, to just show the authority for this. Acts chapter 14 and verse 21. Acts chapter 14, verse 21. What does it say? Okay, they preached the gospel and what? Made many disciples. So disciples have to what? Disciples have to be made. So the question is, and we need to discuss in the lesson how we make them to some extent, but why we go out and do it. So this lesson mainly is going to look at why we go out and do it. Presumably, every single disciple wants to follow Jesus Christ. If you want to follow Jesus Christ, and you could say heavily, it's weighted, that if you want to follow Jesus Christ, what have you got to do? What have you got to do if you want to follow Jesus Christ? He made disciples, so you have to what? So you've got to make disciples. Paul said in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, that he did what he did because Jesus Christ was living in him. What does Luke chapter 19, verse 10 say? What does Luke chapter 19, verse 10 say? What did Jesus come to do? Came to seek and save the lost. And this is what I say when I say that sometimes it's hard for you to kind of pinpoint where in the hierarchy this ranks, because when you look at the commandments that we have to follow, we know that we love God, we know that we love our fellow man. After that, we have several things that we work on ourselves with that we do. But Jesus' mission was actually pretty clear cut. He came to, as Luke chapter 19, verse 10 says, to seek and save the lost. If I want to save people, if I want to be like Jesus, then I'm going to have to be like what He did. And what He did was actually go out and make disciples. And again, you see that very, very easily from Luke chapter 19 and verse 10. Okay, now thinking about this secondly, what else do I need to do? I need to have a sense of what? Purpose. Why do I have to have a sense of purpose? What did He give Peter to do? Follow me and I'll make you what? Fishers of men. So we don't follow the Lord just for the sake of what? Following Him. I have things to do. And when people say that the gospel is sometimes presented as just a list of do's and don'ts, is that correct? Because I think we need to pull this apart a little bit. There are lots of people who would say that the gospel is just a list of do's and don'ts. Is that correct? Is that correct? So it's not easy to answer, is it? Is it correct? Somewhat. Somewhat. The gospel is a message of what? It's a message of grace, of salvation, of hope. That does include what? Things that we do. Things that we do. To build righteousness within us. Things that we stay away from that subsequently also do remarkably what? Build righteousness within us. So when someone says that the gospel is only a list of do's and don'ts, they look at it from only one angle. They look at it only in one dimension. Of course it's got those things. I mean, basically everything that purports to worship a deity have the same things, but it's a message that far expands that. And as it far expands that, it's got a purpose behind it. It is the will of the Lord. And this will of the Lord is that we go to try to make other people like what we have found, like what we've discovered. We don't do it from the standpoint that we as disciples are so good we've got to make people like us. We do it because we realize what we were and what we have without this community, without our belief in God. What we gain from all of that, what we're trying to do, is get that message to other people so that they can have it. And once they have it, then it can start to work and have the effect on their life, hopefully, like it's had the same effect on our life. And that gives, I think, a very necessary and an incredibly important sense of purpose to all of us. And when you think about it, we kind of have this element of all of the different parts of us that go into someone who can make disciples. For example, our mind. We've got to understand the importance of it, but we also have to understand the mechanism of trying to win souls. We have our eyes. What do our eyes see, as it were? What do our eyes see? What do our eyes see? We see, if you think about trying to teach other people, what do our eyes see? It sees the need, and it also sees the opportunities. Now, are there opportunities everywhere? Yeah, there actually are, but it's not going to be with everyone. I was reading a Reddit thread, it was early last week, and someone had posted on Reddit, how do we as a church reach out to people? And interesting, it had hundreds of comments like most of them do. And interestingly, some of those comments ran along these lines. And it's good to be reminded of this, I think. Don't be discouraged by it, just be reminded of it. There were not a few people who said, you don't have to reach out to me. Don't worry about it. If I want it, I'll what? I'll find it somehow. You don't reach out to me. I'll find it if I want it. Now, obviously, that is a certain portion of people. I mean, some of the people, no matter what you do, that's the way that some people are going to feel. But that's not the way that everyone feels. A lot of people are in a situation in their life where they know they want to be better. They know that they want to do better. They just don't what? They just don't know they don't know how. They don't know the answer. And the answer can come from us in trying to help people to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And I think that probably resonates with people because we're making Christians, we're making saints, we're making believers, but making a disciple is making someone that follows Him. There's power in Jesus Christ. There's power in Jesus Christ. I don't want to say that there's not power in the church. There is power in the church. What's the problem with the church over the centuries? Do what, Charles? Yeah, and churches have changed so much that people aren't as comfortable putting their faith in what? In a church, because what can that church very easily do? It can disappoint them in a lot of ways, very, very easily. So what we do is we disciple people, not to church, we disciple people to what? To God. We disciple people to Jesus Christ. And then as we teach them about the church, then of course we'd better what? We'd better do that. We'd better be it. Lots and lots of people out there incredibly disappointed with the concept of church because a lot of people have tried it. They try groups that don't live up to it, and they get very sickened by it. We're making disciples of Jesus Christ. We're getting people to follow Him, and in following Him, they're hopefully learning about what the church is actually supposed to be. And that's where the eyes come in. We see those opportunities. Because like I said, everyone that you see that is lost, as it were, a lot of those people don't want it. Again, if they want it, they know how to find it, apparently, because that's what they said. But a lot of people see it, and they know that some just need a little bit of help finding it. That's what we want. Ears. Ears. What do you think about the ears? What do you think we hear? What do you think we hear? When it comes to making disciples, what do we hear? What do we hear? We sing in one of our hymns, hearing the Macedonian call. What was the Macedonian call to Paul? Come over and what? Preach the gospel to us. We hear that. We don't shut our ears to it. Part of what we'll look at tonight is what are you open to? What do you accept? And then also, what part of the Word of God do you shut your ears to? Because we probably all, either consciously or subconsciously, do that. So ears hear the fact that the call is being made. What do the feet do? What do the feet do? The feet go, the feet travel, and sometimes going and traveling isn't very convenient. Sometimes it isn't easy. Sometimes it's a difficult, discouraging, a long, long road. Sometimes you can teach people and literally you can convert them after one class period. I've done it before. And then some people can take a year or longer. I mean, it's just, but the feet keep on what? Keep on going. If you're going to win a marathon, that's, let's see, the 10,000 step rule a day, how far is that? About 3 miles, I think. I should have done the math before I got up here. So if that's 3 miles, how many steps is a marathon? If 3,000 is 3 miles, how many is a marathon? 25 or 26,000? 25 or 26,000? How do you win a marathon? Well, not win a marathon. How do you complete a marathon? One step at a time. How many does it take? Apparently about 26,000 of them. If you've got longer legs, maybe 24. If you've got shorter legs, unfortunately, maybe 27. But the answer is, the way you complete a marathon is just by putting one foot in front of the other thousands of times. The way that you convert people is what? Put one foot in front of the other. A lot with some people. A lot. Okay. Heart. Let's kind of round out the body here. We talked about all these different parts. What about the heart? What does the heart do in our converting people? The heart, yes. The heart lets us have compassion for people. Recognizing and realizing that what do they need? They need the Word. Yeah, exactly. They need the Word. So the whole concept of it being a sense of purpose is just simply the fact that when we make more disciples, we fulfill our purpose. We have an anatomy, a mind, a heart, eyes and ears and feet that are willing to go and spread it. Another point that we can make is that we also know that we please our Master. So we please our Master in various different ways. So thinking about pleasing the Master, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 9, what does that say? What does 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 9 say? Okay, we make it our aim to please Him. We are all presumably disciples of Jesus Christ. The first step that all of us took was not the step out into the aisle, but the first step that everyone took in becoming a disciple was put quite well in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. We had to deny who? We had to deny ourselves. First and foremost, we had to deny ourselves. Secondly, we had to learn how to please Christ. And in learning how to please Christ, sometimes you learn by that positively. You learn by saying that you have to please Christ. Sometimes you learn it negatively. Sometimes that's what sticks in your mind. And Matthew chapter 10 and verses 34 through 37, learning to please Christ means learning to love Him more than who? Yourself, but learning to love Him more than who? Our family, people that we love, friends that we have. And that's really, really difficult to do. But becoming a disciple means we deny ourselves and we learn to love Him above more than all of that. Kind of a third thing that we do is that we learn not to love what? This one's probably a little bit easier for us to get. We learn to love, not to love what? Yeah, the world. James said sin. So sin's kind of encompassed in loving the world, because loving the world means that we don't love the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. We become a disciple in doing all of that. And again, that becomes extremely necessary for us. So God wants all of us to be saved. He wants people to come to a knowledge of the truth. How do people come to a knowledge of the truth? Someone has to what? Someone has to teach them. Someone has to teach them. In a way, we live in a glorious time when you think about knowledge. We gain knowledge by virtue of having access to what? What do we have access to? Yes, we have access to information. Just say it more generically. We have access to information. So if I really want knowledge on something, I can pretty easily become a what? Pretty easily I can become an expert. Pretty easily I can become an expert. So it's getting warmer. If I want to become an expert on gardening or on lawn care, easy. How do you do it? Just look it up. You just research it. It's either going to be reading about it or watching YouTube videos, but it's pretty easy to come to a knowledge of what the truth is about having a really nice lawn. Okay? We are in a way drowning with information. So the point is not that we need more information. We've got plenty of information. What do we need? Yeah, we kind of need a filter. So who is kind of the filter for someone? It's all of us. It's all of us. You know, I would never tell someone to just go and look up a Bible answer. Why is that? If I tell people to go look up a Bible answer, I know how they're going to look it up. You know how they're going to look it up? They're going to Google it. And are they going to get the truth? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'll tell you, it's hit or miss. So I need to equip myself to be able to get someone down the road of learning and coming to a knowledge of the truth. Because if you just tell people to, just go find the answer, they'll go looking for the answer if it really means a lot to them. And there is no telling what they're going to find. We've got to make sure that what they find is ultimately the truth and then come to the knowledge of that truth, because that's what God really and truly wants. Okay? Because of the fact that there is a great need. Because there is a great need. And Jesus expressed it, I think, greatly in Matthew chapter 9. So looking in Matthew chapter 9, what happens in Matthew chapter 9 and verse 35? Starting in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35, what's taking place here? Yeah, he's preaching, he's teaching, and he's healing. And in verse 36, he sees the multitudes and he has compassion because why? They're wearied and they're scattered. They're like sheep having no shepherd. So think a couple of points ago. They have no what in their life? They have no purpose in their life. They have no purpose in their life. So, he says, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord of the harvest to send laborers also into his harvest. Why is there a great need? Why is there a great need? Yeah. They have no purpose. Or, if you think about purpose, they may not have no purpose, they just have what? They just have a very insufficient purpose. So what might their purpose be? Purposes are probably pretty good. Probably. So what might their purpose be? Okay, to be a good person. They may have a purpose to be a good person. So, years ago, I think it was Oprah Winfrey. What did she advocate? Do one act of kindness every day. So they may want to be a good person. Not a bad purpose at all. What might be another purpose someone has? Getting back. So they want to what, Charlie? They want to have a good life. So in order to have a good life, and we've talked about it a lot, in order for people to have what most people think of as a good life, you got to have money. So they look to maybe get more education or try to find different jobs that's going to help them to have a life that they feel is very important. Again, that's not a what? It's not a bad purpose. What other purpose might someone have? There are other purposes out there. What other purpose might someone have? They want to have a life that's just as full of fun and experiences as it possibly can be. So they're going to do what? What are they going to do? Yeah, they're going to travel around a lot. Well, that travel around a lot, it takes what? It takes money. So to have a life that's full of experiences, and they trade off having a big bank account, okay? That's just what they want to do. And having a life that's full of good experiences is not what? Not a terrible purpose. What's the problem? And we could name a few more, but what's ultimately the problem with all of these purposes? Well, first of all, it takes time away from serving God, but what else about all these purposes? They're all temporary. They're all temporary. Or if you have a specific purpose, that's not a bad one, and then you achieve it. And then what? A lot of people, honestly, a lot of people's purpose, and I hate that I keep going on, but a lot of people's purpose is to get out of debt. And they work and they work and they work and they get out of debt. Guess what the next question is? What's next? What's next? Okay, so we'll talk about the idea of there's such a great need because we're trying to show people the deepest purpose in their life. Ironically, trying to show people the deepest purpose in their life also ends up being just about the hardest thing you can do because it is so deep and it is so personal. But we'll talk about that some more next week.